I was driving home late at night, and I mean really late. It must have been around 1:30 a.m. or so. I had just left my friend Jake's house, where I spent the evening watching movies and hanging out. He lived way out in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by farmland, and the drive back to my place was about an hour long. I was exhausted. Part of me wished I had just crashed on his couch for the night, but I had work early in the morning, and I didn't want to deal with waking up super early just to drive back, so I sucked it up, got in my car, and hit the road. Most of the drive was just long, dark roads cutting through endless fields. There weren't any streetlights out there, just the glow of my headlights stretching ahead, showing me nothing but empty road and the occasional road sign. The only sound was my music playing softly in the background, something mellow to keep me awake but not too distracting. I was about 20 minutes into the drive when I saw something up ahead in the middle of the road. My headlights hit it and I instinctively slowed down. It was a suitcase, not just lying there on its side, but standing upright. I hit the brakes and came to a stop, my heart beating a little faster than it should have. I stared at it for a moment, my brain struggling to make sense of what I was looking at. A suitcase in the middle of the road just standing there. It didn't make sense. Maybe it fell out of someone's truck. But how would it land perfectly upright? I wasn't about to get out of the car to check, though. I was tired, and frankly, it was creeping me out. Instead, I steered into the opposite lane and carefully drove around it, keeping my eyes on it as I passed. As soon as I got past, I glanced in my rearview mirror, half expecting it to move or something. But it just sat there, standing tall in the middle of the road like it had been placed there on purpose. I shook my head and kept driving, telling myself it was probably nothing. Just some weird coincidence. 5 minutes later, I saw something else in the road, a truck. It was stopped dead in the middle of my lane, no hazard lights, no blinkers, nothing. I slammed on my brakes, coming to a sudden stop just a few feet behind. But for a moment, I just sat there gripping the steering wheel, waiting for the driver to realize I was behind them. Maybe they had broken down or something. But after a few seconds, nothing happened. The truck didn't move, no one got out, and I didn't see any movement inside. I gave a quick honk. Nothing. I honked again, a little longer this time. Still nothing. I squinted, trying to see through the back window, but it was too dark. There was no way someone was just sitting in there ignoring me, right? A weird feeling crept over me. Something wasn't right. After waiting for what felt like forever, but was probably only about 30 seconds, I decided to go around it. I carefully pulled into the opposite lane, creeping past the truck, my hands gripping the wheel tighter than necessary. That's when I noticed the dents and scratches all over the side. Deep scratches. Big dents. Like the truck had been in an accident, or someone had been bashing it with something. But what really made my skin crawl? The truck was empty. No driver, no passengers. Just an abandoned, beat-up truck sitting in the middle of the road. I felt a shiver crawl up my spine. There was nothing around but open farmland. No buildings, no side roads. Just emptiness. Who leaves their truck in the middle of the road and disappears into the night? Something about the whole thing made me uneasy, but I told myself it was none of my business. Maybe the driver went to get help. Maybe they hit a deer and freaked out. Whatever the case, I wasn't about to stick around and find out. I pressed on, but I couldn't shake the bad feeling in my gut. Then, not even a minute later, I had to stop again. This time, it was a person. A man stood in the middle of the road waving his arms. He looked to be in his early 40s with messy, unkempt hair and dirty clothes. His arms had cuts and scrapes, and his face looked worn, like he had been through something. As soon as my car rolled to a stop, he walked up to my window with a friendly smile. "Hey, did you see a truck back there?" he asked, his voice casual, like this was a normal conversation. I hesitated. Yeah. Think you could give me a lift back?" Something in my gut told me to say no. I looked him over again. He seemed off. His smile felt forced, and there was something in his eyes that made me uneasy. I decided to ask a question of my own. "What happened? Why's your truck in the middle of the road like that?" For a second, he didn't answer. Then he stumbled over his words, mumbling something about running out of gas and walking to a gas station. But if that were true, wouldn't he be asking me for a ride to the gas station instead of back to the truck? Something wasn't adding, but as I tried to think of what to say, my eyes drifted past him, toward the field on the side of the road. That's when I saw it, buried deep in the tall crops, barely visible in the moonlight, was the back end of a small car. I could see one of the rear lights faintly reflecting off my headlights. A car had been run off the road. My stomach twisted. Suddenly, I didn't want to be there anymore. I rolled up my window. The man's smile vanished. His face twisted into something else, something angry. He lunged at my car, pounding on the window, shouting something I couldn't hear over my own racing heartbeat. I didn't wait to hear what he had to say. I floored it. As soon as I was far enough away, I grabbed my phone and called 911. When the cops got there, the truck was gone, but the car in the field, still there. And inside was a body. It wasn't a crash. It wasn't an accident. It was something much worse. The police think the driver had stopped to help a hitchhiker, the same man I saw, and that was the last mistake they ever made. The suitcase, the truck, it was all a setup, a trap to make people stop, and I almost fell for it. The man I saw, he was never found. I don't know what would have happened if I let him into my car, but I know one thing: I wouldn't be here telling this story. This all happened about 5 years ago when I had just moved to the city for college. I was 19 at the time, fresh out of high school, and full of excitement about living on my own for the first time. Coming from a small, quiet town, everything in the city felt overwhelming. The noise, the traffic, the endless crowds. But I was determined to make it work. My first year in college was a roller coaster of emotions. I made new friends, struggled with my classes, worked a part-time job at a small bookstore, and slowly got used to the city's fast-paced life. My mom, on the other hand, wasn't thrilled about me being so far from home. She found every excuse to visit, always staying in my tiny apartment like it was a hotel. At first, I found it a bit annoying, but deep down I knew she just missed me. By the time my second year rolled around, I had settled into a routine. That spring, my mom called me out of the blue and told me she was coming for the weekend. One of her favorite bands was playing nearby, and she figured it was a good excuse to stay at my place again. The morning of the concert, as she was packing up her bag, she suddenly asked me a strange question. "So, how do you like this apartment?" I glanced up from my phone. "It's fine." "Why?" She hesitated. "I don't know. Any weird neighbors? Anyone bothering you?" I shrugged. "Not really. I don't even see most of them." That wasn't entirely true, though. There was one girl on my floor, Olivia, who went to the same college as me. She was always having people over, laughing, playing music, drinking with friends. She seemed so carefree, and I sometimes wished I was more like her. "Well, just be careful," my mom said, zipping up her purse. "And don't stay out too late after work, all right?" Okay, I sighed. "You have fun at your concert." That night, I finished work at the bookstore around 8 p.m. and walked home. When I stepped into my apartment, it was dark and quiet. My mom wasn't back yet. I kicked off my shoes, tossed my bag onto the couch, and decided to take a shower before eating. As I stood under the warm water, I heard a faint rattling noise from outside the bathroom. I figured my mom had come back. Through the foggy glass shower door, I could see a shadow move into the bathroom. "You're back early," I called out. No answer. I frowned. "Hey, do you want to grab some takeout?" For a moment there was silence. Then I heard a strange clicking sound, like someone clicking their tongue in annoyance. Before I could react, the shadow moved away, disappearing from view. Something about it sent a chill down my spine. I quickly finished my shower and stepped out, wrapping a towel around myself. That's when I noticed it. A strong chemical smell hung in the air like kerosene or gasoline. I coughed and waved my hand in front of my nose. "What the hell?" I muttered. I didn't own a kerosene heater. I had no reason for that smell to be in my apartment. My stomach twisted with unease. Just then I heard the front door unlock. My mom walked in holding a bag stuffed with concert merchandise. "You just left and came back again?" I asked, still trying to piece everything together. She gave me a weird look. "I just got here." My heart started pounding. I told her everything about the shadow, the weird sound, the smell of kerosene. Her face paled. Without hesitation, she grabbed her phone and called the police. They arrived within minutes, checking every corner of the apartment, but nothing was missing. No signs of forced entry. The officers suggested that maybe I had left the door slightly open when I came home and a neighbor, perhaps drunk, had wandered in by mistake. It was a logical explanation, but it didn't sit right with me. Why wouldn't they have said something? Why would they just disappear? And that smell? That smell was real. For the next week, I was constantly on edge. Every little noise made me jump. I checked my locks 3, 4, sometimes 5 times before going to bed. I even thought about moving, but breaking my lease was expensive and I wasn't sure I could afford it. Then, a week later, something horrifying happened. Olivia, the girl from my floor, was murdered. The culprit? A middle-aged man who lived in the apartment below us. After killing her, he set his own apartment on fire, dying in the flames. The news speculated that he had been annoyed with Olivia for being too loud, but that wasn't really true. Even when she had people over, the walls were thick enough that you could barely hear anything, and then it hit me. What if that shadow in my bathroom had been him? What if he had planned to attack me that night but backed off when he realized my mom would be home soon? The thought made my skin crawl. For days I replayed that night over and over in my head, searching for details I might have missed. The sound of the door, the shadow behind the glass, the way he had just stood there, and the kerosene smell. The police quickly closed the case, labeling the man as a disturbed individual who had finally snapped. No further investigation, no other witnesses, just me. And I wasn't even sure what I saw. Even now, 5 years later, I still think about that night. The uncertainty lingers. The fear never fully fades. All I can do is pray for Olivia, for the life she lost, and thank my mom for coming home when she did. Because if she hadn't, I might not be here to tell this story. I work the overnight shift at a little pizza shop, just a hole-in-the-wall kind of place, open 24/7. The kind of joint where people swing by for a greasy slice and a soda before heading back into the night. During the day, it's busy with families, workers on break and kids grabbing a quick bite, but at night, it's dead. The shop sits in a mostly abandoned strip mall. A few years back, it was a decent shopping area, but now everything except the pizza shop is empty. Dark windows, locked, doors forgotten places. At night, the parking lot stretches out in eerie silence, a perfect setting for something out of a horror movie. Most nights, my shift is mind-numbingly boring. By 10 p.m., the last of the dinner crowd is gone, and I show up at 11 to start my shift. Usually, I spend the first half hour cleaning up after the evening crew, wiping down counters, tossing out old pizza slices, and stacking boxes. Once that's done, there's not much else to do but wait for the occasional late-night customer. At 1 a.m., a few teenagers came in, laughing, ordering a couple of slices, then taking off. After that, silence. I got bored and decided to take out the trash. The dumpster is out back, tucked near the abandoned buildings. As I walked over, the night was dead still. No cars, no wind, just that unsettling silence that makes you feel like something is watching you. I tossed the garbage, wiped my hands on my apron, and turned back toward the shop. That's when I saw it. A flicker of light. It came from one of the abandoned stores. A brief flash like a flashlight moving through the dark. I stopped, my breath catching in my throat. It wasn't a reflection. It wasn't passing headlights. This was inside the building. I squinted, staring into the blackness beyond the glass. Nothing. The light was gone. A chill crept down my spine. I knew I saw something. My brain scrambled for an explanation. Maybe kids messing around? Maybe a homeless guy looking for a place to crash? But it felt wrong. I turned and hurried back into the shop, locking the door behind me. The unease sat in my chest like a stone. At around 2 a.m., I leaned against the counter, staring at the front windows, trying to shake the feeling. Then, I heard it. A soft thud from the wall behind me. I spun around. The wall that connected the pizza shop to the abandoned store. Another sound, something shifting on the other side. I wasn't alone. My fingers hovered over my phone. Should I call the cops? Would they even take me seriously? Hey, I heard a noise next door. That's not exactly an emergency. Then the front door chimed. I jumped, my stomach twisting. A customer. But something about him made every hair on my body stand up. He was in his late 40s, scruffy, unkempt beard, greasy hair. His clothes looked like they hadn't been washed in weeks, and the smell, oh God, the smell. It was a mix of sweat, booze, and something else. Something foul. Hey, welcome in, I said, forcing a smile. What can I get for you? He didn't answer. He just stood there, staring at me. Seconds stretched. The silence thickened. He glanced at the pizza display, then back at me. Then he grinned. Not a friendly grin. Not an I'm here for pizza kind of smile. No. This was different. Then, without a word, he stepped back and walked out. I exhaled, my pulse pounding in my ears. What the hell was that? I turned to watch him disappear into the night. My gut screamed. At me, something wasn't right. I needed a break, fresh air, space. I grabbed my lunch and went to my car, locking the doors behind me. I unwrapped my sandwich, but I couldn't eat. My eyes stayed glued to the front of the shop. Then, movement. Two figures appeared, creeping around the corner of the building. My blood went cold. One of them was the man from earlier. The other was someone new, taller, broader, and holding something in his hand. A flashlight. My breath hitched. My hands shook as I grabbed my phone and dialed 911. Through the windshield, I watched them enter the shop. They weren't browsing. They weren't customers. They were hunting. They moved fast, searching the place. One of them vaulted over the counter. They were looking for me. I ducked down in my seat as my phone rang in my ear. The dispatcher's voice felt distant. "1, what's your emergency?" "There are 2 men in my shop," I whispered. They're looking for me. They came in earlier, then left, and now they're back with someone else. Please, send someone fast." The men tore through the shop, checking the back room. 30 seconds later, they bolted. They didn't take money. They didn't grab food. They were looking for me. I stayed hunched in my car as they ran out, disappearing into the night. The cops arrived minutes later, but the men were gone. When they searched the abandoned stores, they found a broken door. The men had been hiding there, watching, waiting. And I had almost been their victim. I realized it then. The first guy wasn't a random customer. He was checking, seeing if I was alone. And when he saw that I was, he went to get his friend. If I hadn't decided to take my break in my car, I don't even want to think about what would have happened. I quit the next day.